a gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for June 5th, 2024. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, I hope no one is planning to announce any new video games soon because Elden Ring is back. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host to Game Mess Mornings. It's Imran Khan, everybody. Imran, how are you doing?
Woo, hi, hello.
Woo.
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing good. I was sicker and I'm getting better. Took some antibiotics for some sinus infection. Good timing. I'm on the upswing. Jeff Backlar not doing as well. He's getting sicker as we're speaking. So hoping
this is a bad time to get sick.
Exactly. Hope he's able to like rebound, and maybe he's probably not going to be able to be there on day one, but I hope he's able to get out to LA and hang out with us. I know he was sad about missing it last year, but I'm feeling like I have a pretty good grasp on what's happening. I have been thinking a lot about our show and our live show, and I've kind of put everything else like that we're going to be doing there off to the side. Now it's like, oh yeah, I did make all those appointments. I'm going to be seeing some fun games. We're going to be doing talkovers, and I love that stuff. So I'm like, okay, just get excited. We're going to be out in LA and having a good time here pretty soon. So feeling pretty good about it. How about you?
Same. So my wife left this morning because they have the whole IGN live thing.
Yes, they
so
do.
they're starting that early.
Yeah, I saw the rundown for that. They got a lot of stuff there.
I'm actually very much looking forward to this Phil Spencer interview because I'm really curious because that's the only interview he's taken this entire week.
Yep.
So
I will say we did have him and they backed out. So yeah, like if people were expecting that at the live show, it was in the works. And then of course it's like when everything happened, it sort of just fell apart over time. We were gonna have him and Matt Booty and Sarah Bond and all that stuff, but at a certain point I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
Like we're not owed that interview, but oh well, maybe next year.
Yeah, if I were them, I would back out too, which makes it all the more curious they're not backing out of this one.
Yeah,
so,
it does. I'm like, I need to see what this is going to look like. It's definitely been on the top of my mind. So you're right. Yeah, that's happening. There's a whole bunch of stuff happening over there.
Yeah, and like for me, last year I came to Summer Games Fest. This year I also don't really have a reason to go to Summer Games Fest, but it's like there's so much FOMO of not going.
Sure.
It's like, yeah, I just want to go and I'm going to hang out with people. I'm going to go to the Giant Bomb
exactly. Like honestly,
yeah.
just having you like hanging out with us at night, like I'm like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Imran could be there, like schmoozing with people. I just love the idea of like that. That's the way you people can come and enjoy this stuff. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Are you like taking appointments or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm working some freelance for like a couple of people. I was looking at my list today, and there's like a couple of games I'm like down for that. I'm like, this seems really cool. Like I'm very much going to enjoy trying this thing out.
Yeah, and just the way people say that Summer Game Fest is a replacement for E3, and what it really is, it's Judges Week mutated into something bigger. And Judges Week was always a cool thing, as far as I understood. I actually never ended up going to any Judges Week because Dean would always go for us. But it's like, yeah, it's kind of taking that, making it a little bit bigger. It's a cool place to hang out and see people, and all of that kind of makes it worth it. And then on top of that, it seems a lot of these companies are getting value out of bringing their games here and showing it off. So it's I still get excited about all of this.
Yeah, and plus, like there are definitely indie developers at Summer Games Fest that are like clearly not in over their head, but they realize they have a big stage to get people to preview games, and are immediately like they're changing things last second in a way that I'm like, maybe that's not great, but also they know that this is their big chance, and I'm like, I'm happy to be a part of that in some way.
Yep, exactly. Yes, I'm looking forward to it. I'm interested to see how this like summer game announcement season, the summer game mess, how it keeps changing and reacting to what it needs to be. It is now more malleable. It is something that can be different as opposed to what E3 was. We're like, we got to make E3 make sense, and there was just at a certain point in time no world where that was making sense for a lot of people anymore.
Especially E3 can't make E3 make sense anymore. So
it was never on the table for them, especially with the people that were running it. Complete incompetence at a certain point. I mean, other than that, like, how are you feeling about, like, got any games in your life right now that are really popping off? I keep seeing everyone talk about 1000 X Resist, and I'm just like positive that game's not for me, but I think I'm still going to try it anyhow. That's where I'm at. And Lorelei and the Laser Eye is the other one that's like burning a hole in my pocket. You got anything like that?
So my wife got 1000 X Resist, and that's why we merged Steam libraries, so I can finally play that.
Yeah, did you do the new family sharing thing? They got that. Yeah, that worked really well for me.
Yeah, it's surprisingly easy, though we have to do it like both ways, which is, I think, a little strange. But that game is waiting for me. I'm reviewing currently the Rogue Prince of Persia.
Right. Yes, I did see that.
Yeah, I have that review in progress. I'm working on the actual final review. It's a really great game mechanically. I think it just needs a little bit more content at the moment. And also, by my friend, we played through Lorelei and Laser Eyes.
Yeah, that's the one I gotta try it. I know I do.
I think it's a fantastic, really striking, really interesting game. They built it in a way that you have one hand on the controller and the other hand like scribbling things in a notebook. Right. And I don't think that works super well.
Sure.
Because like that means you can't back out of a puzzle and you're like you accidentally go into one, or like you can't back out of a menu. You have to go to like a designated like back button kind of thing.
Right.
Which there should have just been an option for that. Like, hey, I don't want to do this. I'm just gonna hold the controller and use a notebook like a normal person. But it is what it is. The game is, I think, very interesting from a storytelling perspective, from a visual perspective, from a puzzle perspective. Towards the end, the puzzles get a little abstract for me. But like, if you just like being a puzzle sicko, this game is
that's me.
100% that.
Yep, I'm realizing more and more that I am that puzzle sicko. So yeah, I'm gonna hop in. I'm gonna finish up Thousand Year Door, and that's my next one is Lorelei and the Laser Eye, and I'll try 1000 X Resist. I know a lot of people are suggesting that for me.
I'd say based on what I know and based on like who I've seen like review it, because like I know Michael Hyam reviewed it and loved it. Yep. I bet that thing's anime as all hell. So if you have like love for Neon Genesis Evangelion, then
I could find
there's probably something there for you.
And finally, before we get to show, Atari sent me this jacket that I really like. It's a members only jacket. You know what? You ever see the movie The Founder about McDonald's? Yeah. In that movie, they're like, why'd you have to like take over this? Why was it so important? And at the end of the movie, it's just like, it's the name, like McDonald's. There's just something about the name McDonald's. It's but like my name's like Ray Kroc or whatever it was. He's like, that sounds terrible. McDonald's, and that's a name you could build something on. I feel the same way about the Atari logo. Something about this Atari logo just nails it. It's one of my favorite logos. I don't have that much affinity for Atari games, but this logo just really nails it. So,
what's the youngest person you think recognizes that logo?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because it did seep its way into popular culture, you know, in a strong way in the 80s and 90s, sort of like, you know, it's the logo in God, what's the Harrison Ford movie? Well, I can't remember the name of it. The one where he hunts down androids. Blade Runner. Thank you. Yes, it's like, you know, it's Blade Runner's like, oh, covered in Atari logos, that sort of thing. So I would imagine there's a lot of young people are like, yeah, the Atari, the logos, the old games, for sure. And I bet they would not necessarily know an Atari game if you showed it to them. Other than they would guess that, like, that looks old as shit. Is that an Atari game?
I feel like that's probably true. I feel like you can show, I'm sure there is probably like some TikTok trend where it's like they use the Atari logo for something.
Yeah, probably. Almost certainly. They will mind all that stuff. All right, now it's too hot. I got to take the jacket off. All right, let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Also, real quick, tickets on sale June 9th, Bellwether, our live show in Los Angeles. They did just add a special feature where if you get the ticket, you get a year of premium on Giant Bomb. If you get the VIP ticket, you get lifetime premium. And people are like, hey, I can't make it, but I kind of want this deal. Don't worry, take advantage of it. We're like sending invites out to friends. We're just going to pack the theater in whatever way we can. It would just be nice to support us in that way if you can. All right, let's start here with Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree previews. Now, we did talk about this a little bit on the podcast yesterday. Mike talked about playing it, but Shinobi on Twitter collated a lot of the details, so let's go through that. Stepping out into the new realm of Shadow area feels like the first time you entered Limgrave, feels expansive and dense with content. This is going to be sort of like a bullet point of what people were saying in previews. The ulterior goal is following Miquella's crosses as the main critical story path. There are over 10 full bosses plus additional side bosses, over 100 new weapons to find, and 8 new weapon types. For example, the Heavy Smith Script Axe is a new weapon that can be thrown with any cost or resource attached, making it an effective choice. The Backhand Blade can be split into dual-wielded swords to stab enemies in their sides. Sounds like Monster Hunter weapons. There's a martial arts like class or weapon type that you can equip, and then basically now you can kick and punch and all that stuff. And there's flurries of combos. Bularat is a large fortress. Bularate, a large fortress dungeon between the size of Stormvale Castle and Castle Morn. It has lots of optional paths. There are new baddies like small and large scorpions, gravebirds, hatchet-wielding ghosts, heavily armored knights, etc. One of the bosses is the Divine Beast, a dancing lion from the trailers, and the Shadow Realm Blessing. There's a new optional system that uses consumable Scoundtree fragments and applies a stackable buff that negates some incoming damage and increases the damage you cause to opponents. Basically, a lot of new stuff here. The more I talk to people who've played it, Imran, it sounds like it is the improvement, or it is the a ton of new features, a ton of new things to do, this new space to explore, and it also does feel like, hey, and they are making improvements to the fundamental ways that Elden Ring works. I'm very excited about this. Where are you at now that previews are out there?
So I was thinking about it the other day. From Software's never really made a bad DLC.
Right, they're very good at DLC.
Yeah, there's like some questionable choices in Dark Souls 2, but like all of their DLC I feel like has been better than the main game in a lot of ways. So like it seems like, unless for some reason they just went crazy with Elden Ring, like they're going to follow that same pattern this time. I platinumed that original game and I have not played it since release, basically. So I'm real afraid I'm not going to be good enough for this game.
Right, yeah, I was going to say, that's intimidating, right? Where it's like, oh man, you got to get your sea legs back underneath you.
Yeah, I loaded the game up just to make sure my save file was all right, and I went into the round table room and it was all on fire, and I was like, I don't remember why this was the case. I don't remember how to really do anything. So like it was I feel like some part of me wants to just start a new save file and go back to my old one once the DLC comes out, but just like familiarize myself with the games again. But I feel like the build I ended up in a build that I think has been nerfed to hell since then. But I feel like that build is also very specific, so it's not gonna work out well. But I am very excited for this. I think it's only a few weeks away. It's like end of June,
21st, right? June 21st. Yeah. I just looked this up because it's like I updated my NVIDIA drivers yesterday, and they had the thing where it's like, hey, here are the games we're updating the drivers for, and one of them was Shadow of the Erdtree. I'm like, what the hell? Already? Is this game out in a couple of days? Because usually the drivers get updated like a day or two before the game is coming out, but it's like, no, 3 weeks. But I bet a big part of that is, teams are busy. They are also probably traveling to announce stuff. And I've heard that From Software wants to make sure that people have plenty of time to review this Erdtree expansion.
There was a criticism when an Elden Ring base game came out, where they gave it to us, I think, a week and a half before embargo. And I put up a thing of like, this is not enough time. I doubt I was even really fully at a limb grave by that point.
Right.
Like I think they're trying their best now to make sure people get it at a good enough time to actually play through it, feel through it. I love the thing about the Shadow Realm Blessing, because one of the concerns I had when they first started talking about Elden Ring DLC was, well, my character is really strong, and if I get to a point where I can't beat something, there is no grinding around that. So like it sounds like there is a way to get around that by making yourself stronger, just not through traditional levels.
Yes, it seems like they've had the time to think of all of those issues, including like, the review process, but also like how are people going to be coming into this? Like they're going to be coming in very cold. They're going to be coming in completely fresh. There's a variety of ways to come into the DLC, and it sounds like they've accounted for all of that. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's I said this on the Bombcast yesterday. The rest of this year, it's Astrobot and this that I'm most looking forward to. And we're gonna get through this summer game mess here in a couple of days, and I might be like getting on the other side of that, and I'm sure there'll be stuff I'm excited about. I imagine I'm still gonna be most excited to get back into Elden Ring. And to mention, you were talking about going back, maybe starting a new character. A fun way to do that is through that seamless multiplayer mod. We've been doing that, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm getting used to this game very quickly again in this like silly setting where like we could just kind of do what we want and run around and be a bunch of goofballs. I've really enjoyed that.
I was watching you guys do that, and like halfway through that video, I messaged Nikki. And I said, Nikki, between 4 people, you almost reach someone who knows what they're doing.
Yes,
and Nikki's
exactly.
like, yeah, I got a cheat engine.
Yep, exactly. Honestly, we're going to do that again. Well, maybe you can come hang out, because apparently it could sport like it's stable up to like 17 players, I've heard. So it's like I kind of want to see what that looks like. Maybe we just pile a bunch of people in. Shadow of the Erdtree looking very good, looking very promising. What's that?
I just it looks great, and I'm sure that I'm going to have one of those moments where I go in very confident and just end up getting my ass beat.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's what I'm thinking. I'm also like, I don't think there would be any reason that this update, this DLC, wouldn't run well on the Steam Deck, which is where I played basically the entirety of Elden Ring when it launched. So I'm hoping that's also the case, because that makes it very easy for me to get through a big game like this. Just have it on the Steam Deck.
This was the game that convinced me I don't understand anymore when people are talking about performance. Because like I played it on PS5, and the prevailing discussion on PS5 was just play the PS4 version. The PS5 like it stutters and all that. I'm like, I never noticed any of this. It has not affected me. This is not to say that like I am in some way like superior for not noticing it or whatever. It just happens that like I notice frame rates. I don't notice stutter that much, and Elden Ring always been fine to me.
Right, frame pacing is like a different thing than just straight up frame rate. Some people are very sensitive to it. Some people aren't at all. And I remember I did notice some stuttering when I played it on my PC at the time, and then I played it on the Steam Deck. I'm like, why is the stuttering gone? And we found out it's like, oh, they were like compiling the shaders in Proton on Steam, so when they were translating it from Windows to Linux through that Proton layer, they were actually improving the game. I'm like, oh, that's magic. Okay, fair enough. I can't believe that's where we're at. But yes, in general, very excited. I'll say at the very least, Valve will do a lot of work to make sure that this game runs great on the Steam Deck, because it was such a huge hit for them on when that thing launched. Basically,
I've talked to Valve employees at GDC.
Yeah.
When something sells real well, it's good for them, so they will do a lot of effort to make sure it continues selling well.
Yeah, I always think about that with like the Switch and Hades, where like, Nintendo's like, yeah, okay, this game seems to be doing really well. We'll give it a little bit extra attention, and whatever that ends up looking like. I'm like, oh, Nintendo, really? You do that too? Just every once in a blue moon, they actually will. All right. Up next here, this is a rumor, and I'm really going to emphasize rumor, because I don't want people to get their hopes up and this doesn't happen and it kind of ruins the whole show for them. But there is rumor that the Xbox Showcase will feature a first-party shadow drop and details on that portable console. This is from Ben Carey at Pure Xbox. It's that time of year. Showcase season is upon us, and in the run-up to Microsoft's big Xbox Games Showcase this coming weekend, a bunch of leaks and rumors are starting to crop up, as is the norm with these sorts of things. On the back of the rumor that Octopath Traveler 2 is coming to Xbox Game Pass imminently, that very same source is reporting some pretty major things to come from Team Xbox. Apparently, Microsoft will use its upcoming showcase to not only shadow drop a first-party game, but to also unveil its long-rumored portable console. Now, we must stress that this information comes from a well-known leaker who is Ecstasis on YouTube, with a bunch of like numbers in there and stuff. A report that is entirely in Spanish, so there's a chance that bits could have been mistranslated. Even so, a Reddit user has given it a go, and here's their summary of the video. So it looks like we won't find out exactly what this shadow drop game turns out to be until the showcase happens, which is fine by us, as that keeps it more of a surprise. Information about an Xbox handheld would certainly be interesting, but we'll believe that when we see it. Okay. The shadow drop one, we'll start there, Imran. I'm a little surprised they would do this again after Hi-Fi Rush, where they shadow dropped that, and it was.
But even they agreed. That was successful. They said
they did say it was, yes.
It's like I would be worried if I was the studio who was shadow dropping a game at an Xbox conference, but as far as they're concerned, that worked.
Yeah, I mean, that's. I wonder. I'm sure they don't think that was necessarily the entirety of the problem with whatever ended up happening with all that. I like shadow drops. I'm hopeful about this. I do wonder what this could possibly be. I suppose maybe that beat 'em up game, that like stylized beat 'em up game from the team that did the Banner Saga, maybe that's ready to go or something like that, or maybe it's something we haven't heard about at all. I always think about like hearing that Xbox was working with a team on a Diablo-like Wu-Tang game. And I'm like, okay, I hope that gets announced at this show. We finally see that. I don't know if it's still real, but at one point it was. It could be something along those lines. I don't think this is going to be one of their major games, right? Is there like a limit, a ceiling to what can be shadow dropped in your opinion?
I think when you shadow drop a game, you're either so confident that it doesn't need feedback that you are just like, all right, like a Hi-Fi Rush, that you are just put it out there, or you shadow drop something that like is effectively in early access, which why my mind goes to the idea of Killer Instinct. That seems like There have been rumors of that. That seems like a thing you would just put out there and say like, "Hey, it's free to play. Try it out. We'll balance around what you say."
Yeah, I'm like wondering, like, 'cause for the longest time with Killer Instinct, what we would hear is they want to do it, but there's no studio available to do it. And then, Iron Galaxy did stop Rumbleverse a little bit ago. Have they during that time were they also working on this? I think it's possible.
Yeah,
I would love to
I
see
believe Iron
that.
Galaxy they were like, I think they were too busy with that Giant game when
Yes,
when
they were
Killer Instinct
definitely
was
too.
like,
They were definitely too busy for quite some time.
yeah, so like they're not that busy anymore, and we've not heard anything else they're doing. I don't like know anything, but like to me, the Killer Instinct rumor seems more legit because it seems like an easy thing to get back to, especially with that anniversary update.
It's a good fit too. I think it is about the. It's the right kind of game for that, and it's at that like ceiling of like it's much bigger than something like that. It'd be tough to pull off a shadow drop, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, then the handheld. We know that they are hot and heavy for this, right? We know that they want to do one of these devices. I think for a long time it was like, okay, let's dial in what we expect Microsoft to do with this desire to have a handheld. Do they wait until they can make an Xbox Series S equivalent handheld that is sort of proprietary and they control the whole thing? If so, that's going to take some time for the processors to get that powerful and still be portable. Or do they just make a portable PC and put an Xbox layer on top of it? Seems like that's where they're headed, especially if they have details right now. And if they have details, well, what are your expectations for this thing?
I think there is no sense in competing with Nintendo with a dedicated handheld at the moment.
Yes.
Unless you can do like, and that's not even a dedicated handheld. Nintendo got out of it because they were competing with themselves. Like it would be an absolutely insane idea for like a Vita 2 or an X-Boy or whatever to exist at this point in time. So it does seem like a Windows capable handheld is probably the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
It's still not a smart idea. I don't think that like they're going to capture some percentage of the market that they're not used to capturing. Handhelds are traditionally known as like, they do skew towards the mid-20s, but also like they're traditionally known as children's things. Like you have to market them and price them at a low enough price that you can get a lot of that market. And that's why the Switch Lite exists. That's kind of why the PS Portal exists, because it's not one of those. It's if they tried to make essentially a ROG Ally for a modern day or a Steam Deck equivalent, I think it would be one of those things that we look back on 6 years and be like, wow, I can't believe they actually tried to do that.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more optimistic, but you're definitely right that they need to know what they're targeting with this device. It can't just be some sort of generic throw it out there, be like, hey, new Xbox handheld, and they don't think about much beyond the ramifications of that beyond that announcement. I think a big help would be if they treat this as sort of a guiding device or a, like when NVIDIA makes their reference hardware and then people build their GPUs on top of that reference hardware themselves. And I think that would start with, okay, put out an Xbox handheld. And really what you're putting out here is a version of Windows that is built for a handheld that just launches as an Xbox experience and that you can give to Asus, you can give to Lenovo, you can give to everyone else. People could sideload it onto their Steam Decks if they want to. And if they can get that working, that is sort of like a preparing for a future where if this dedicated handheld gaming PC segment continues to grow the way it has been, and becomes sort of another sort of tier, another pillar in how people play games, you are there basically at the foundation with an interface that these companies will be willing to use so that you can once again have an ecosystem to capture microtransaction sales and whatever. That's all well and good. That's easy to say. They've had Windows on PC, a place where they could capture a lot of game sales by just making that a better place to buy games through their services, and they've not been able to figure that out for 30 years. So why would I expect them to be able to do something different with a handheld gaming PC? I don't really. I don't have a lot of faith in that. I do appreciate, though, that I've heard Phil Spencer out there saying he understands that Windows on these devices is a problem, and he wants to address that. And I just think, okay, if they're going to have details about a handheld gaming PC, that can't happen without fixing all of these other issues. Yeah. So at least they're aware. I will be very curious to see what it looks like.
I think about a decade ago, Spencer convinced Nadella on a vision of cloud as the next big thing.
Oh yeah.
And I don't see them backing away from that with a dedicated handheld that plays games off hardware right now. I think I could see like what was that Logitech cloud streaming device? Something similar to that,
Sure.
because that seems right in line with Microsoft's weird decision making and also their current like heading. But it's a dedicated thing that like a Steam Deck that has the hardware inside to play Windows games is, I think, just it's a leap too far unless they're really, really not making gaming the main focus, but it's going to be the main focus of marketing. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like that is a thing that Nadella thinks is for everyone, and Spencer thinks is for Xbox, and the Office team thinks is for productivity. Like if they make a Microsoft all general thing that is like a tablet with buttons, then I can kind of maybe see that.
Yeah, and it like there's always all these other factors. Like when you look over at PlayStation, like how does the PSVR 2 happen? How does the PlayStation Portal happen? Well, they just have hardware teams that they need to keep busy, and so Sony goes to PlayStation, says, hey, we're going to make these things, and we're going to have them make the in-zone earbuds, and we're going to brand those alongside PlayStation. And Sony Interactive Entertainment just goes, okay, whatever. Yeah, ride the coattails. We get it. And, Microsoft's going to have that to a certain extent as well. They have hardware teams. They have the Surface teams, and those engineers could be, used to make a device. And I think there is more interest in doing that now than ever at Xbox for a handheld. What that looks like in this first device is completely up for debate. Whether or not they do a dedicated handheld that plays the games locally or a cloud streaming device. You're right that cloud has been their focus for a very long time. I do wonder if that was like, when Phil goes to Nadella and says, hey, yeah, we're embracing the cloud. If he says that because he knows that's what Nadella wants to hear, because that they're, cloud services-based company. And so if you couch your strategy in that, it makes it sound better to them and makes it easier to get a lot of money so you can make your acquisitions. I do think that the way I've heard these executives talk recently, they do seem convinced that there is something happening with Steam Deck and the Asus ROG and things like that they don't want to be left out on. I don't know if that's always the best place for Microsoft to be, not wanting to be left out, because then they, that's where we get the Zunes and things like that. I'm hopeful that this thing comes out and is more successful than the Zune. I think that's possible, but it's also entirely likely that you're right. In 6 years, we look back and be like, all right, well, I'm still playing my Steam Deck, but that thing that was an oddity. And a lot of it will just come down to execution. If they have a device that is very easy to use and is even less scary for people who are adverse to PC gaming than the Steam Deck, which I think it does a very good job of presenting the PC experience as a consoleized experience. If Xbox could pull that off and win over some of those people, there is an audience there. Whether or not that's going to be changing their fortune's size of an audience, that's probably not the case. At the very least, though, personally, I'm excited.
You just made me consider a probably terrible possibility that they're going to release a Copilot focused handheld.
Yeah. Right. I know exactly what you're saying. What is the thing you could say right now that would get your ideas approved? Well, it's powered by AI. This is the AI console. This is the AI handheld. Imran, you are 100% right that we could be in that future very soon, which is depressing. But that's where things are with these companies.
It records everything you do through the camera.
I would like that for a game. I could just hey, okay, Copilot, where was that thing I saw a little bit ago? And it just shows me it would never work because this shit doesn't really work like that. But I would love that. All right, let's hit this next one. Palmer Luckey wants to sell you the world's best tribute to Game Boy for $200. This is from Ethan Gotcha Kotaku. The mod Retro Chromatic is the latest attempt to cash in on retro nostalgia. It's a slick-looking Game Boy Color knockoff that competes with the bespoke and perennially out-of-stock analog pocket by playing all of your original Game Boy cartridges. The main difference is that the mod Retro Chromatic is being sold and marketed by Oculus Rift co-founder and diehard Donald Trump's booster, Palmer Luckey. Palmer's holding a $100,000 plate fundraiser for that the felon this weekend, actually. So just keep that in mind, everybody. The mod Retro Chromatic comes in a variety of colors and launches later this year for $200. While it plays old Game Boy and Game Boy Color cartridges via an FPGA circuit, it also comes with a new version of Tetris pre-installed. It has a port for an original link cable to play multiplayer, as well as a USB port and headphone jack. blah blah blah. The Verge basically asked, okay, hey, this is $200. The Analog Pocket is $220. The Analog Pocket can play Game Boy Advance cartridges. Also, can add a bunch of other cores and stuff like that. Now, this should also be able to get other cores, but Game Boy Advance might be too powerful for it. Well, we'll have to wait and see. But yes, The Verge reached out to him and says, okay, hey, what are the benefits of the chromatic? And he said the color temps are actually right. The clock rate isn't slightly off. And I think he's saying in comparison to the Analog Pocket. The pixel structure isn't totally wrong in a way that ruins subpixel aware sprites, etc. And he's like, the reason this is because this uses a custom 160 by 144 pixel, 2.56 inch pixel perfect IPS display. That is the resolution of the original Game Boy. And the Analog Pocket, for people wondering, has a 1,600 pixel by 1,440 pixel, basically 10 times resolution of the Game Boy, to the point where the subpixels don't matter. No one's going to see that. That resolution's so high, but whatever. Let's set Palmer aside just for a second here, Imran. What do you think of this device?
It's hard for me to set Palmer aside because fuck his mega ass.
That won't be long.
Yeah, but this doesn't seem like we were talking about how the Xbox needs to find an audience, or the Xbox handheld would need to find an audience first. This thing doesn't have an audience. If you're a retro game collector or player or whatever, you have so many other options.
Let me grab mine real quick.
Yeah, like it is a simple. The retro market has more or less decided what they want from this thing anyway.
Yeah,
it's if you want to play a Game Boy or a Game Boy Color game, you're either doing it on original hardware or you're doing it on a Pocket.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it's really hard not to compare this to the Funny Plane FPGA one I literally just built. And when I read what this thing is capable of, it sounds a lot like this, which I got for $80. Now, I had to assemble it myself, but that is a 10-minute process. And to me, this feels like, Soldier Boy in it. He is putting his name on something, and it's got a magnesium shell, so it's going to feel more premium. Sure, whatever. But it's Game Boy and Game Boy Color games with a 160 by 144 display for $200. I'm not really sold on that. That's just not where the market's at. Especially when you look over what Taki Udon is doing. Taki Udon is a YouTuber who covers these things. He's working on several devices, including a handheld, that are going to use much cheaper versions of these processors that are in the Mister and things like that. He's doing a Mister handheld, and that is going to, if it's equivalent to a Mister and is able to do all of those cores and has support for all of those cores that are already available, and is in this price range, it's going to blow this thing away. So I'm very curious if these things that he's touting actually matter. I bet they don't.
Yeah, there's two kinds of retro handheld. There's two markets essentially. There's the people who buy whatever Ambernet comes out, whatever Retroid comes out. They're just oh, this is $100 to play GBA games that I liked as a kid, and they do that and they put it with an SD card and they enjoy their ROM set or whatever. And then there's the collector's market, which this thing is targeting, which already has a better option. Yeah. Will likely go with a thing with a higher resolution that is roughly the same price. And nobody likes Palmer Luckey.
Yeah.
That's one of the other things is maybe there is some America First retro market that really wants to support conservatives, but I think the people who would like him already don't like him because he's sold out to Facebook. The people who would like him for his politics don't like him because they don't care about this. I don't understand where this thing is coming from, or what. He put on his Twitter or something a picture of this thing next to an Analog Pocket, and the Analog had every screen thing filter turned off. And he was like, "Look how much better mine is." No, you. It's like those Resident Evil 4 HD pictures that scared the hell out of them when they showed up. This is. If you have to lie in the first place to market your thing, then no one's gonna want it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think the reality is we're going to get the comparisons, and I imagine some people are going to be like, look, this device is fine. Maybe it has its place. Maybe there are people who will enjoy it. Maybe there are a couple of games where that sub-pixel arrangement does matter. I find that very unlikely, but maybe so. You know, there are experts in this field, people who cover these devices constantly. You know, Retro Game Core and Retro Dodo. I'll be following their coverage curiously. At this moment, though, it feels like a money grab situation. I know he said, like, I don't expect to make money off this. I mean, maybe if it's not, it's at least like, oh, I should be in that space. I know better than everyone. And then we kind of get this device. It's like, okay, yeah, magnesium shell. That's interesting. But if I'm coming to this because I'm nostalgic, there is a reason I got the funny playing one, even though I also have an analog pocket, because it's just a Game Boy Color. It's literally a Game Boy Color shell. That's what I want. I don't want it to be like, well, we're getting it pretty close to that. It's like, no, pretty close just is that uncanny valley. I want it to be either exactly that or do your own thing. Analog pocket's good enough, that sort of situation.
It looks like when a TV show doesn't have the rights to a controller.
Yeah.
And like they just paint a Game Boy green or something.
Yep.
Like this is, if you're going to make it a nostalgia play, make it a nostalgia play. Just like what I don't understand this weird color scheme he's got going with it.
Yep, it's odd. And you know, at the end of the day, God, I personally really hate Palmer Luckey. I just do. The best thing that's happened since I started working at Giant Bomb is when in the terrible wake of Waypoint closing, when Palmer Luckey was going on his victory lap that they closed, and he did so on the Giant Bomb Reddit. Everyone on the Giant Bomb Reddit just destroying him, completely dunking on him. It was a beautiful moment of like, this is what humanity is capable of. I am very proud of everyone who participated in that.
Yeah.
The dude could just eat shit. I'm sick of him.
Money can buy you people who agree with you, but can't buy you friends.
Yes, no, exactly. And boy, and he's also like turning, like if he's pictures of him, turning more of a douchebag every day. Like just
hard to believe incredible. That he has more room to do that.
Exactly. It's powerful stuff. All right, we're gonna take a quick break. When we get back, a lot more headlines, including is The Last of Us 2 PC remaster done? Seems like. All right, we are back, and as promised, let's get back into the news with The Last of Us 2 Part 2 Remastered on PC has been ready for at least 7 months, it's claimed. This is from Chris Scullion at VGC. The PC version of The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered has been sitting fully developed for more than half a year, it's claimed. Deal Labs user Bill Kuhn, who has a long track record of reliably leaking game announcements and other information, says they believe the game has been finished for some time. According to the insider sources, development on the PC version started at least as far back as 2021. What's more, and this is the most important piece of information in this article, we believe that the game's development is well and truly complete and dating back to at least November 2023. I think there's like a million reasons why this happens. This isn't too surprising, especially when I think maybe they want to spread these out for a number of reasons, including, well, they want to be a little bit slow with how they take things from PS5 to PC. But also, this is the right one to be like, well, you know, if we already waited this long, let's wait until we have either some news with the Last of Us TV show, or maybe till season 2. I've seen a lot of people speculating that. And while that might not be the entire reason, it makes sense with the way we've seen people's behaviors really just amplify game sales when the TV shows are doing very well. And they've already had evidence that this show does very well and leads to that. So having a PC version ready to go in that moment would make some sense. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think The Last of Us Part 1 ended up seeing a sales surge when the show came around.
It did.
It makes sense to hold this for that. It also makes sense from just a general pacing perspective. They just announced Ragnarok. Like, they have a pacing of the games they want to release on PC. Nintendo sits on games all the time because they can just go, okay, nothing's releasing, let's release a game that we already have in development, kind of thing. And I think that's actually kind of wise. We don't do it in AAA development because you need to release the game as soon as possible to recoup the cost from making the game.
Yeah.
But if you already have, like, it's a port of what's well known as one of the best games in Sony's portfolio, like, coming to PC players have been asking it for a long time. It's coming after the first season of a very popular show. Like, it makes sense to just hold on to it until it will do the most good. I don't know for a fact that they're correct, that they're just sitting on a completed version, but if they are, I get it.
Yeah, it's we've seen Nintendo do this more and more frequently. We saw with Metroid Prime Remaster, and more recently with was it the Thousand Year Door, where they're like, hey, in Germany, these things were submitted for like approval and and registration a year and a half before it came out. And it's like, yeah, Nintendo's been doing that a lot. They are very likely sitting on a half dozen, if not more, very, very completed games and games that have been completed for quite some time. That rumor always goes around about Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and for a reason. So I think Sony might be looking at that, but like, hey man, maybe we should do that more often. I don't know if it makes as much sense for PlayStation to do that with a lot of games the way Nintendo does, but it's definitely something where it's like, hey, be more strategic with your releases. There's something to that, right?
Yeah, movies can sit on the shelf for it. Like, there are movies that have come out in theaters recently that were done a long time prior. Furiosa just came out, and that's because they spent like a year and a half editing. Like, it makes sense to like pace your media out in a way that best serves your audience and best serves your business interest with it.
Yep. And at a certain point, I think for Nintendo, it comes down to, we got these games in development all side by side. And that's because we have multiple teams. Then when it comes to putting them out, do we want to have multiple teams doing QA and multiple teams doing marketing? Or do we want to have like just the teams that we're comfortable working linearly in a linear line on these one after another? And it seems like they favor that. And then it has the benefit of, and now we have this backlog of stuff where when we have a rainy day, when we move the Switch 2 from late 2024 to sometime in 2025, we could fill in those gaps with plenty of stuff that we were holding off. And, I wonder what that world looks like, Imran, where it's like, okay, well, what if the Switch 2 did launch this fall? Would a lot of these games just have moved to Switch 2? I suppose that's what would have happened. Or do they kind of fall into that no man's land of now the Switch 2 is out and these games are on the Switch and obviously has backward compatibility. And maybe that's what they're looking at to solve this. But yeah, I wonder what that would have looked like.
I think, just like digression here, I think they learned from the mistake of the 3DS where they kept it alive too long. And then people stopped buying games on the 3DS. But what they're probably going to do here is not like, they're not going to clean cut 150 million people. Like, it's just not going to happen. That's not Nintendo. But I do think they will, like, we'll see, hypothetically, a Mario game comes out on Switch 2. I think we'll probably see a Switch 1 version of that game as well. Like, I also think that's why they recently made that, what was the name of that acquisition they just made from Embracer?
Yeah, like
Shiver.
Shiver? I was going, Shiver, yes. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So I think that's why they bought them, is to make Switch 1 versions of games for the Switch 2.
Yep.
But who knows? We'll see. But I think they're not going to... They are going to... There are games I know that were supposed to come out last year that I would be shocked to move to Switch 2.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And like in chat, someone mentioned like, oh, if they would have just like put Bowser's Inside Story on Switch instead of like keeping it on the 3DS, like that studio would still be around, things like that. It's like, yeah, I think they learned a lot of lessons then, and we'll see how that all gets applied now. And I think you're right about Shiver. I do. That's the most that's like the biggest get they get out of that. So yeah. All right, let's keep moving along here. Behaviour Interactive announces structural changes and lays off 95 employees. This comes from Rachel Kaiser at GamesBeat. Behaviour Interactive announced today that it's making several changes to its structure to focus on its historical strengths in the face of increasing competition in the games market. According to the company, this restructuring includes changes on the corporate and operations level. As a result, Behaviour plans to lay off 95 employees. 70 of those employees work in Behaviour's Montreal office. According to the company, its employees' headcount grew from 575 to 1,300 in the last 5 years. Its new changes will allow the company to provide to focus on its strengths in the horror gaming space and as a service provider to developers. It's the same story over and over, Imran. Hiring up a ton of people, having to scale back due to people in charge not being able to accurately sort of forecast the reality of the situation. And I think it's Del Walker on Twitter, the developer, who had a list of every studio that's had layoffs or closures this year. And it's just, that list is so massive. We do these stories almost every week. At a certain point, it all blurs together. And you forget, it is literally dozens and dozens of studios long that have been affected. Do you get any sense that we're getting to the other side of this? What do you feel about Behaviour Interactive? What are your thoughts?
Behavior Interactive expanded too fast.
Yeah.
They made 3 acquisitions in the last like year and a half, and then they clearly didn't think about. There's a certain segment of game developers that don't think are affected by the pandemic boom and bust, and they think like, oh well, we can acquire this and like we'll figure out how to pay it later. Who was the one the other day? Avalanche.
Avalanche. Yes.
They made an acquisition of a company that otherwise, to their credit, would have died without them. But also they made that acquisition because of bad turnover at Avalanche. And suddenly they're like, oh, it turns out we can't really support this. We don't have the money to buy a whole other developer and keep everyone running and all that. I think we're going to keep falling in this cycle over and over as we see these, like, what would you describe Behavior as? AA development?
Yeah, right. They're definitely like strategically targeting hyper fan spaces with games that are like pretty decent in size, but not AAA. Yeah, AA sounds right.
I think we'll start seeing more and more AA developers realize that they don't have the liquid capital to act
the
like
cash flow is just
AAA
not
major
there for them.
developers.
Yes.
Yeah. Like they might right now, but 3 years from now when they're having to pay, let's say, 90 new people $100,000 a year salaries, they're not going to have that money.
Yeah.
So they will just like have to just lay off a bunch of people, which, not to defend them in any way, this was entirely their fault, but
that's the status quo for a very long time in gaming. Yes.
Yeah, when you don't have the money, you don't have the money, and the fact that they don't have the money is entirely because they are short-sighted.
Right. I think there was the way gaming was for such a long time is you ride the high tide, and then when you expect low tide, you got to lay a bunch of people off. That was the way it worked. And I think in recent years, there was this belief that everyone could switch to some sort of model that had live service and continuous microtransaction purchases. So it would smooth out that curve, that waveform would be a little bit flatter. And so your expectations could be like month to month, we're going to make about this much money, and that's our cash flow. And that is how we're going to be able to support everybody. And obviously that just didn't happen. The reality is gaming is much more like the way it always was, where there's high tide and there's low tide, and these companies just aren't going to be able to like brute force their way to flattening that out. Like Sony was, yeah, Nintendo is, Xbox is, sure, with their services. A lot of other companies are just not going to be able to do that, especially in that AA space.
Yeah, you don't convince investors to give you money with the idea of we can weather whatever's coming because we expect there to be a low tide. You tell them we're going to be constantly growing forever and ever. And they're like, cool, I want to be a part of that, and I'll give you some money. And I think that's where all this stuff is falling apart, because no one is actually thinking about what happens if we can't do that.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, you're right. They have to tell that story, and they have to believe it to a certain extent. And that means they have to behave that way. And then we get a lot of these investments where we look back like, what were you thinking? And obviously Embracer is the poster child for this, to the point where point of excess and the point of neglect and the point of just absolute buffoonery. But there is a reason that these things keep happening everywhere.
I'm going to ask you a really absurd question.
Please.
Did you hear Taco Bell's latest investor call?
I didn't hear it in person. I was not on that call, but I did hear someone relay that they're like, we are an AI first business now or something. Is that what they said? I fell on the floor when I heard that, Imran. That is beyond absurdity. I don't know what we're doing, but you're right. You have to tell the story that investors want to hear, even though investors are just dumb across the board, just emotionally driven buffoons themselves. So again, that's like, it all feeds into itself, where it's like, why does this happen? It's, well, you got to look at the circus. This is a circus, and all these companies are playing to that circus audience. It's nuts. Yeah,
it is. I don't think even they believe that to an extent, but like you have to market like you do, and it does have ripple effects, and it will cause people to lose their jobs at some point.
I mean, and the reality is like lots of people are getting paid to be AI shills or AI consultants and stuff, and if someone wants to give me money to be an AI consultant, I'll go in there and tell you it sucks. I have no problem with that. Absolutely. Yeah, sure. Whatever. But
I've consulted on some games, and I've seen like them use some AI stuff, and I'm like, no, you can't do, like, AI is in pre-production. Like you can't extract it from there from this point. I was working on a game where it did in fact like use it for pre-concept art designs, like submitting what I want this character to look like versus like to the concept artist who already tried it. But like, the people in charge don't think of it as a thing that makes things easier. They think of it as a thing that will make things cheaper.
Right.
Which is not the way to think of it, because in order to get cheaper, you start cutting away at salaries. In order to cut away at salaries, you have to start firing people.
Yep.
And I think that's ultimately where the whole like AI thing falls apart, because it's like I am fine using it to remove tedious things from game development. I am not fine with it becoming a tedious thing in and of itself.
Yeah, it is. You're still going to be competing in a space as a development studio where there are going to be a lot of major studios that aren't going to cut those jobs and are going to have artists in charge of that. And if you try to replace that work with AI, you are going to look terrible in comparison. And it's going to be real rough for a lot of games that try to pull that off. So
I'm still waiting because Ubisoft revealed that NPC dialogue AI thing, and it was just dog shit. It was absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
And like, they're eventually going to put it in the game because it's Ubisoft. But I'm curious, like, if they even try and market on it. Like, if they tell game developers, or not game journalists, like, oh, this is the first game we're using our AI NPC dialogue. Or if it's going to be like, every first review says, yeah, the dialogue in this really sucks, and there's really no explanation why.
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised. Surprised that like every time I try to use AI, it's basically just disappointing me now these days. So every time I try, it's I also there was a tweet this morning where it's someone's like, okay, in a couple years, artificial general intelligence, which is like the real goal of a lot of these people. I remember John Carmack like left Meta to go work on that, which is like an AI that is equivalent to humans and can then grow beyond us. We're gonna have that in a couple years because look at this line; it keeps going up. And then someone's like, yeah, well, my child has doubled in weight over the last couple months, so they're going to be 7.5 tons by the time that they're 10. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about here. People looking at a short little segment of time where there was some improvement, not really knowing how to measure that in the first place, and then just assuming line is always going to go up. So
yeah, I had AIM chatbots in 1998.
Yep.
Like we've not plateaued much far beyond that.
Yep, exactly. All right, a couple last stories here. Metaphor ReFantazio Showcase is announced for this Friday. This is from Tom Ivan at VGC, just real quick. Atlas has announced an upcoming Metaphor ReFantazio live stream. The showcase will air on YouTube on June 7th at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern. Earlier that day, director Katsura Hishino and artist Shigenori Sojima will be presenting the game during Summer Game Fest Live's showcase. So I expect that to happen pretty frequently throughout that showcase, Imran, where there'll be like a small little tease or some trailer, and then there'll be more details very soon afterwards. That's I guess it makes sense. Like, you don't want to just have that one beat at Summer Game Fest. You want to have like multiple opportunities to get people's attention. Yeah,
like the other day on that Twitch Q&A, someone asked Jeff Keighley, like, is Beyond Good and Evil 2 going to be there? Which, one, no, it's dead. Or not dead.
The way we knew it, the way we knew Beyond Good and Evil 2 is dead. Sure, it might have mutated into something else, but come on.
And two, there's a Ubisoft forward. If they had a Beyond Good and Evil thing, they would put it there.
Yep. Yeah, for real. Although, I did hear that there was one PlayStation game that might be at Summer Game Fest that wasn't in the showcase. Not anything huge, anybody. It's a thing people have already heard about. Exactly. Yes. Right. Yes. And it's so we'll see. I'm like, well, why did they make that choice? But whatever. They make the choices because they make the choices. I
assume their partner wanted it there, but yes. Yep. There are things that might appear at Summer Games Fest that don't or have bigger shows later. Basically, is the point. Mm-hmm. And Metaphor is one of them. If hypothetically Beyond Good and Evil 2 existed, it would have been one of them.
Yep. How are you feeling about the showcases overall? You got anything you're really looking forward to or hoping shows up?
Honestly, not really. Like this one, last year I was excited for Rebirth, and they had Rebirth. And this year, it's just like, I don't know what the next big thing I really care about that has not been announced is like the Switch 2 and Switch 2 games. And those won't be there.
Nope.
So we'll figure out, like, I'm interested to see what their final curtain call for the Switch is when they eventually do a direct. But like, I can't think of anything at Summer Games Fest that's gonna like make my socks roll up and down. You know?
Yep. Yeah, I know what you mean. I hope we get the other side and the Nintendo Direct gets announced and Metroid Prime 4 actually does show up there. But that is me just coping. And I'm fine with that.
I think they'll do a Doom show. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. All right. Last thing here. Remedy looks set to reveal Alan Wake 2's Night Springs DLC at Summer Game Fest. This is from Chris Scullion at VGC. Remedy has strongly suggested that it will reveal Alan Wake 2's first paid DLC expansion at the Summer Game Fest showcase. A new message posted on the game's official Twitter account makes reference to Night Springs, which last year Remedy confirmed would be the name of the first expansion. The message tells fans they can join the percolation on June 7th. Man, they love their coffee references over there. Sure, that sounds about right, about the right time. And this is also, I think, the level of announcement that like Keighley keeps referencing is like what to expect from a show like this, where a lot of games could have DLC, stuff you already know about, updates, things along those lines. And I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm down for that. I'm just, like you said, socks up and down, probably not happening.
Yeah, my only, this sounds interesting. I wonder if they tie it to Control in some way. Because, by this point, they're done with, they're still working or finishing up pre-production on Control 2. So
they know what to expect. Right, yeah. They know where they can have the connective tissue. I wouldn't be surprised if they, really play that stuff up more than they ever have before. We'll see. All right. Summer Game Fest is imminent. It's Wednesday now. I'm on a plane tomorrow. Friday, we will be talking over Summer Game Fest. And then that night, we kick off GB at night with night one. Bunch of great people are going to be on the couch. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then, of course, Sunday, the live show at the Bellwether. Come, get your tickets now. Go to Ticketmaster.com. Search for Giant Bomb. You can get your tickets there. And again, if you get your ticket, you get a year premium. If you get the VIP package, if you're going to be part of a Q&A, and you get lifetime of premium. It's worth checking out. Link is in chat. We'll put a link in the description as well, and all that stuff. All right, poll question. While I get that set up, Imran, why don't you tell people where they can find you, what you have going on, all that good stuff?
You can find me on Twitter at ImranZOMG. You can find me on Blue Sky at imrankhan.bluesky.social. You can find the Prince of Persia review I'm working on IGN.com. What else am I doing? You could probably find the things I'm doing at Summer Games Fest somewhere. I'm doing some for IGN. I'm going to be working for doing some work for VGBs, which is John Warren's new site, which is launching, I think, this Friday. And I'm going to be hanging out behind the Giant Bombs live stream, so you at least see me on that back screen sometimes.
Yeah, I'm going to try to slide Imran onto the couch too if we can make it happen. He's my first alternate on every segment that he's around for, so we'll see if we can make it happen. I'm coming
straight from the airport to the Giant Bomb thing, so
perfect. Yes, again, just come hang out. I kind of that's my favorite part, so can't wait to make it happen. All right, we have the poll question. Let me bring that up. This is from earlier this week. How will Sony price Concord? Let's go here. 7% say it'll be around $20 to $30. 23% say it will be free, but maybe with a paid early access that you could pre-order. 26% say it'll be around $40 to $50. That's where I'm at. And then 43%, the vast majority of people, compared to the other options, say it'll be around $60 to $70. Imran, what do you think?
I think 60 is the budget price now, and that's what they're going to hit.
Okay. Yes. It would not shock me for sure, other than the whole idea that this thing has a price in the first place shocked me a little. But now that they said there's pre-orders, I wouldn't be just completely floored if we find out it's that expensive. What do you think the fate is of Concord? Is it really all doom and gloom at this point, or is it people are overreacting? What do you think?
They clearly put enough money into it that I think it would be insane for them to pull the plug early. But I also don't they're trying to compete with Fortnite and Overwatch in terms of the game style and the audience they are looking for. There's clearly a game in search of an audience for that are teens or 20-year-olds that like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
And I think those people are busy. They are busy playing the other games this game is inspired.
Yes,
they are.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. New poll question. We'll get that here loaded up in a second. It is, what are you more excited about? And this is going to be kind of Elden Ring versus the field. Are you more excited about all of the announcements at Summer Game Fest or Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree? Of course, you'll be able to answer that throughout the weekend because this is the last Game Mess mornings until next week. Let's see. We won't be doing it on Monday. Tuesday, we'll have a bombcast of some sort. And then Wednesday, so it'll be Wednesday of next week. So a whole week before we're back. But again, you're going to get plenty of stuff from us from Giant Bomb. Keep tuning in. We'll have plenty to talk about on GB at night and the talkovers and all that stuff. All right, Imran, thank you so much for spending today talking with me about video games, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's always a blast.
Always is, 100% of the time. Thank you all for listening. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.